This is Gardening in America, and I'm Ed Hume. Today we're in the beautiful city of Portland, Oregon, the city of roses, and we're at the International Rose Test Garden, and I'm with the curator, Bob Downing. Bob, where is the International Rose Test Garden located here in Portland?
We're just a stone's throw away from downtown on the hills on the west side of the city in Washington Park.
This is an absolutely gorgeous garden. I'm sure we're here probably one of the most beautiful times of the year.
Yeah, we just passed peak bloom about 4 days ago. The garden is still in glorious color right now. And a much better show than we've had in the last several years. It's a beautiful show.
How many acres does the garden cover?
Our garden is 4.5 acres, not including our amphitheater. We have on display about 8,000 roses and about 550 different varieties. Some we only have one of, others we have several of.
Tell us, what would be the best time of the whole year to come to the gardens?
Probably the second week in June. That's the best bloom season, and it's right at the height. When we have our Grand Floral Parade for a Rose Festival, you can watch the parade and then come up here, and generally the garden is just in an absolute wonderful display.
Now, the entire season would go from when to when?
Generally, the good bloom season is from the first part of June or late part of May through mid-October. There's another real good bloom flush in September also.
Is there? Okay.
And a good one mid-July.
Now, with the amphitheater, you have special events that take place during the year?
It varies year by year. In the first part of August, there's going to be a series of free concerts with the Portland Outdoor Symphony and a few other classical music and popular music shows. They should be real good. It's free shows, bring a lunch, or a picnic dinner or something.
Tell me, you have an Adopt a Rose program. Tell us a little bit about that.
We've been offering an awards program here since 1919. Some of the roses that we have issued awards to are no longer available on the commercial market, and not very many other places either. So we are propagating some of the roses and asking for volunteers to take those roses and grow them in their own homes in the community locally, so that we'll have something, should something happen to ours, as bad weather or whatever, and we lose the rose, that we'll be able to get that again locally. And mostly we're just doing those with roses that are no longer commercially available, or they're down to one or two spots where you can get them.
Also, you need volunteers always, don't you?
Oh, always. We have need for volunteers to help us with the deadheading. Anybody that grows roses can imagine that you can't do 8,000 roses with our staff of 4. So we look for volunteers mostly for doing the deadheading in June through October or so. But we also have a need for volunteers that want to do things like develop promotional brochures or educational things that we can give out to the public, because we really do want to be a part of the community here too.
Bob, thanks for sharing the garden with us. It's absolutely beautiful. We really appreciate it. And next time you're in Portland, hope you have a chance to visit the beautiful International Rose Test Garden in Washington Park. Usually when we think of an evening garden, we think of lighting in the garden. But today let's talk about a moonlight garden. And what is a moonlight garden? It's one that includes the beautiful gray foliages or light foliages of plants, and also the light colored plants. And where do you put the moonlight garden? Always off of the patio, the deck, the lanai, or the part of the garden that you use the most. Maybe by the entry area, in fact. And with so many people spending so much time on their jobs these days, the only time you have to enjoy the garden is maybe at night, and the moonlight garden is the ideal solution. Now, here are several plants that really work out well in such a situation. This is the African daisy, a light flowering variety, and then the gorgeous white colored snapdragons. The lighter colors are what are really important. And look here, the nicotiana with its great fragrance. What a nice plant, because the fragrance comes on at dusk. And you could also use the white heliotrope and white stock for fragrance. Fragrance is a very important part of your moonlight garden. And look here, the monkey flower. The light colored ones are particularly good. And then the ageranthemum. And this is a variety called Dana. Look at the gray or light foliage color, and then the white flowers of the daisy are really important. Any of the daisy flowers would really be great for your moonlight garden. And look at the light color here of the petunias. And also the yellows of the marigolds. They pick up the light of the moon so nice, especially during the summer season. And up front there, the white color of the impatiens, that would be great for a shaded part of the garden. And then, of course, the different varieties of Dusty Miller are excellent plants to use in the garden. And back here in the back, one of the light foliage varieties of hosta, again, a great plant to use in the garden. And you could also use the gazing balls. They are excellent in the nighttime garden. We placed ours in the water lilies down by the dock because we spend a lot of time down there. And in addition to that, we not only want to think of foliage color, but we also want to think of flower color and fragrance. That's what makes up for a beautiful moonlight garden. And any light colored ornaments would also be good in this area. And the most important thing always to remember is that put it in the area where you're going to enjoy it the most. In this particular case, right off of our patio, it also lights the staircase going down to the beach below. If this is a subject that interests you, here's a book that I highly recommend by Kathy Wilkinson Berry. She's been a guest on our show, and it's called Evening Garden. And you can find it at your local library, or you can buy it at your local bookstore. It has some excellent design ideas, plus lots of other information. The Evening Garden, a nice addition to your garden. Even though it's summer, you can still plant out container-grown evergreens. And here's a golden variety of heather called George Hunt. That's really pretty, and because of the darkness in this area, I think it'll brighten it up quite a bit. Along the front here, I've used a grouping of 3 hebe, or what's commonly called veronicas. And these will have kind of a lavender blue flower, and they'll bloom a little bit later in the season and for several months, so they're really going to be pretty. And they should lap over a little bit over the edge of the edge stone there. And to add also a little bit of foliage color in this area, the variegated foliage of this variety of Euonymus Silver King should be, should brighten up this rhododendron in the background. And by the way, the rhododendron in the background, you'll notice, still has the dead flowers on it. So you may want to take out a minute and just pinch those out so that it doesn't restrict the new growth that's developing on the rhododendron at this time of the year. Now here I've used a very dwarf variety of rhododendron. This is a variety called Caleticum. It has a purplish flower that's very, very pretty, very low growing. Look at the foliage though. It has a nice compact growth habit. One of the really select varieties of dwarf rhododendrons to use. Here's a variety that also will grow down over the edge. It's called Kinnikinick. It's native to many areas on the west coast. A really nice ground cover plant. And another variety of heather here is C.D. Eason, and you can see it's in bloom right at this time of the year. Heather, there are so many different varieties, and some flower in the winter, some flower in spring, summer, and others in the fall. So they're really a neat plant. And then here in the foreground is the little low-growing thyme. This is a variety called woolly thyme with its gray foliage, which will make a nice addition to the landscape too. And then here, the combination foliage of rainbow leucothea is really nice. And down here I have another variety of summer flowering heather, and I'm getting it ready to plant. So I'll add a little bit of processed manure and also a little peat moss to the planting soil. By the way, I'll mix a little bit along the edge here. And this is kind of a tough area to plant because of the tree. It's above. The roots of the tree really make it difficult, and sometimes they determine where you actually set the plant, not sometimes where you want to put it. And we kind of loosen the soil here a bit and just set that. Heather and similar plants, almost all evergreens in fact, are surface feeders. So it's important that we set the root system right at ground level. And we may want to make a little bit of a mound and trough around it so that we can water it during the summer season. There's some grapevines that you can use for providing privacy in the garden. In this particular case, we tried to pick vines that Myrna, my wife, particularly likes. So every other post is an evergreen clematis that blooms in February with fragrant flowers. This one here is her favorite, the wisteria. That happens to be a pink variety. And down about 4 posts, we have the purple variety as well. And then in between, we have one of the passion vines. And so this will have an evergreen screening all 12 months of the year. Once you've picked out your vines and prepare the hole, then I would suggest you add a little bit of peat moss and also add a shovelful or so of processed manure. And if you're using the deciduous types of clematis, you probably would want to add a little bit of lime as well. And is what we're going to do in this particular case is to plant the two together. Now, this one is the evergreen, the Armandi, that flowers in February, and this one here is a spring flowering variety also. It's called Montana Rubrens, and it has a pink flower, rose pink flower, just covered with small flowers. Very, very pretty. Now, this was stapled across the back, so you can see we had to remove the staples first. Now, let's take it out of the container, and very carefully, because that stake has no support anymore, and then we'll just work it around the back here. Is what we want to keep in mind is that from this point on, now we have to provide some support for this plant, and we'll need to probably check it about once every 2 or 3 weeks. And you can use several different types of material. Is what I like to see you use is something that's quite flexible. Maybe something like this line, which is a nylon line. So you can see it's very, very tough, and it needs to be cut, of course, in fact, with the pruning shears. But that way then, we can actually tie this to the support in the background. But see, this is flexible, so as the vine grows in diameter, it will be able to hold it without crushing the vine in any way and doing any damage to it. So we've got this one in place. The next thing we'll do then is to actually go in and take this one out of its container as well and put it in the same planting hole. Oops, that's tough because you've got to, in fact, this is a job really for 2 people. And there we go. And all I need to do then is to support that. We have an evergreen vine and a deciduous vine. Before you know it, this whole trellis area will be filled with vines. What a great way to provide privacy in your garden. This is a great time to begin cleaning up the perennials in your garden. And you can see I've cut some of the dead flowers off of delphiniums and coreopsis and a few of the others here in the landscape beds. But notice here, this is a delphinium. Now the main flower spike is in bloom. Isn't that beautiful? Just a gorgeous plant. And there's secondary blossoms coming along the side. When this gets through flowering, I'll simply cut out the center part. Now when the side ones get through blooming, I'll cut them down also to the bottom foliage before they go to seed. And that's the whole key. See, that's why I've picked these before they've gone to seed. Because once they've gone to seed, they've completed the cycle. And Mother Nature then makes no further attempt to bloom. But if you get the spent flowers picked before they go to seed, then there's every attempt to reproduce, and reproduction is more flowers. So is what we'll do is simply go in here and cut off these dead flowers, stem and all. Be sure you get the stem too, otherwise that's going to turn brown and it's not going to be attractive whatsoever. And you have to be very careful. Let me just cut this one and show you. This is a flower, and this is a dead flower, or what we call a spent flower. So you can very easily cut off a good flower if you're not really careful. But do that, if you'll do that on a regular basis, boy, you'll keep these flowering for just the longest possible time. This, for example, is a Scabiosa, and oh, it will really just flower right up until frost if you keep the spent flowers picked. Now, here's a plant that I've been keeping the spent flowers picked, and it's been in bloom for weeks, actually for, almost a couple months now. So now there are a couple dead flower spikes, and I'll just go in and cut those off. Here's one that still has a few flowers, so I'll leave it. See, but you can see all the other stalks in here that I've cut back earlier. And it's going to flower for a much longer period of time. Also notice here, these have been in flower for months, actually since March. So close to 4 months. And what I've done is always about every other week go in and cut off all the spent flowers so that they will continue to flower, because Mother Nature has then not completed the cycle. And look at how much better the plants look too, if all those dead flowers are cut back, like so. And again, you'll see there's a dead flower stalk, so we want to be sure that we get the dead flower stalks off too, because they distract from the overall appearance. So if you'll take just a little bit of time to go in and cut back those perennials, you'll find that they'll flower for a much longer period of time for you, and the plants, of course, are going to look a heck of a lot better too. That's a little bit of maintenance that you need to give your perennials at this time of the year, and you might also give them a shot of fertilizer to really make them look nice. The showy heuchera, our plant of the week, probably better known as coral bells. This is a variety called Brandon Pink. It grows about 24 inches high and spreads about 12 inches in width. The coral pink flowers are very pretty, has a little bit of a mottled foliage to it. And then this is a very popular variety, best known for its beautiful foliage. This is the Bressingham Bronze, and it grows about 2 feet high and spreads about a foot in width too. The foliage is really a great characteristic. And then the next variety is this one. This is called Pewter Moon, and it grows about 15 inches high and spreads to about 14 inches in width. The flowers on this are kind of an ivory bronze in color, and the foliage then is a very attractive bronze in color. Really a nice variety. And then this one is also a gorgeous variety. This one's called Ruby Mist, and it grows to a height of about 9 inches and a spread of about 12 inches. The ruby red flowers are really outstanding on it, and really dark green foliage. And they're kind of silver underneath. It's really a nice plant to have in the garden. And another of our plants of the week is this one, the beautiful African daisy. This is a variety called Stardust. And Stardust has purple pink daisy flowers on it. And if you remove the spent flowers, it'll bloom all summer long. It grows about 24 to 30 inches tall and does best in full sun. And of course out front here, I need to mention also the Scabiosa. This is a great variety called Butterfly Blue, a great plant for the summer garden. All of these are perennials, so ask for them at your local nursery or garden center. We're in Seattle at Woodland Park Rose Garden, and I'm with Sue Nickel, who is the Grounds and Facilities Supervisor here at the park. Sue, where is Woodland Park Rose Garden located?
Rose Garden is about 6 miles north of downtown Seattle, about a mile west of Interstate 5, right at the entrance to the Woodland Park Zoo.
And I know that's of special interest to you, but this is a great facility for the family, isn't it? There's more than just the Rose Garden and the zoo.
Well, yes, there's Lower Woodland Park with lots of picnic facilities down there, tennis courts and all sorts of activities.
Yeah, it's a great family park. Now here at the Rose Garden, how large is this garden?
It's about 2.5 acres.
And how many roses do you have in the gardens?
Approximately 5,000.
Yeah, beautiful. And different types of roses.
Yes, we have large variety of roses, including hybrid teas, grandifloras, floribundas, miniatures, climbers, and tree roses.
Excellent selection too. And what would be the significance maybe for the public to come to this park?
Well, it's a wonderful place to have a quiet afternoon, first of all. But also it's a great place for people in Seattle to come see what kind of roses they might want to plant in their own yards.
Yeah, they could judge them, couldn't they, for whether they're disease resistant or hardiness, I guess, and also the different heights in which they grow.
Yes, and flower color, when the peak bloom occurs.
Sure. Yeah, there's so many different aspects. Here at the park also, I noticed that there's a lot of the shrubs that are topiary pruned or have really interesting prune shapes.
Oh, yes, they do. We've been pruning it this way for several decades now, so they're very nice conifers.
And that brings me to the question, when did the park start?
Park was created about 1924,
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's been here a long time.
Now, over behind me is a gazebo, I noticed. That's a new addition to the park, isn't it?
About 2 years ago, the staff of Safeco Insurance donated it to the park in honor of their chairman of the board, who is a rose lover.
I see, yeah. This is such a beautiful facility. When is the park open?
Park is open every day of the year from 7 a.m. until dusk.
Okay, and when would be the best time to come?
Best time to come is actually right now. This is the peak bloom season here. But anytime from about the 1st of June to the end of September, people are guaranteed to see lots of roses in bloom.
Yeah, and a great, like you say, a great place to visit. Is there any fee to visit the park?
No fee whatsoever, but we do urge people to leave a donation to help us support it. You bet.
Thanks very much, Sue.
My pleasure, Ed.
Next time you're in Seattle, you might want to visit the beautiful Woodland Park Rose Garden. That's all the time we have today. Hope you can join me at the same time next time for Gardening in America.